Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. I wanted to further elaborate on a story that I touched on in passing in my previous video. And this story could be one of the most important stories published before the year is out in regards to the sport of boxing and what might happen moving forward. Arum Heyman to make more fights in 2020 after Wilder versus Fury. Legendary promoter Bob Arum was quoted as saying, "I can predict with no uncertainty that Wilder vs. Fury 2 will be one of a number of fights Top Rank and PBC will be doing together. Some on ESPN, some on Fox, and others on pay-per-view. I think that is the absolute case." Arum told BoxingScene.com in an interview, "Everything changes in boxing. Everything changes in life. There is now peace among promoters. We have no problem working with the PBC. You're dealing with professionals. But the press paints a different picture. When PBC had all of the money from hedge funds, their policy was not to deal with anybody. That's long since pass." Went on to say, "I have no problem working with the PBC, and I don't think that they have a problem working with us. People talk, but they don't know what they're talking about. It's easy for others to say we won't deal with each other, but that's not the case. I speak to Al every day now because of the promotion for Wilder vs. Fury. Al Heyman has a modus operandi to be in the shadows and not talking to the press. That's something he wants to do, and we can't change that. If anything, I speak to the press too much."
For the right arrangement, rival promoters are all willing to deal with one another. That's the good news. You can't keep kicking the dog when a dog is not responsible for anything. When actually the dog is quite willing to cooperate with everybody. I don't only speak for myself, but all other promoters.
Now bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this Bob Arum, this version of Bob Arum that seems to have made amends with Al Heyman and his PBC, this is the same Bob Arum that once said the PBC and Al Heyman are a cancer to boxing. That tune has since changed, and that leaves the fans like you and me asking why. What's different? What's changed now? And I'll tell you what changed. I'll tell you why it seems like these two mortal enemies have since buried the hatchets and are, at least seemingly, at least according to Bob Arum,
he said it, not me,
going to be working together moving forward into 2020 to make fights. I'll tell you what changed. I'll tell you what's causing this. DAZN. DAZN is causing this. You have to understand that whether you guys out there like it or not, whether you like these fighters or not, DAZN just so happens to have the two biggest draws from both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. They've got Canelo Alvarez on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, but they also happen to have Anthony Joshua on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. No one on that side draws more fans, generates more revenue than he does, and the same applies here when it comes to Canelo in terms of active fighters. I mean, short of Floyd Mayweather coming out of retirement, you know, there's just nobody that brings in numbers like the redhead.
just accept it.
DAZN is making it very difficult for all the other game in town to really do things the way they've been doing things, the way they want to do things. And the only way that these other outfits can not only survive, but thrive, is to work with each other. The byproduct, ladies and gentlemen, of what is a very competitive market. I warned you guys about this. I warned you. I told you that this was going to happen once DAZN landed in America with all their money to throw around and all their talent to buy up. You got to understand that, you know, it's the networks mostly that cause these rifts, these constant politics, this red tape in the sport of boxing. The promoters themselves make commitments to these networks, and they try to honor those commitments by making sure that the best fights are happening on those networks to thereby get those networks the biggest ratings and extend their relationships. That's the way it works. And it doesn't benefit the network to have, one promoter set of fighters that's supposed to be fighting on that network going someplace else and generating ratings for someone else. This is more or less the
underlying cause.
The rhyme and the reason for why certain fights don't happen. Pretty much. That, and sometimes some promoters just want to protect their fighters. They see that a fighter has a future, or they think he has a future, and they don't want some guy with some other outfit ruining that future. There's also that. But what we may be looking at here, at least based on old Bob Arum's comments, is that
shit done changed.
They've got to join forces so that they can put on big events of their own. Because if they don't,
DAZN will take over.
DAZN will dominate the landscape. DAZN has the biggest draw in the heavyweight division. Deontay Wilder's fans, they can live in a bubble if they want to. And Tyson Fury's fans, they can too. At the end of the day, money talks. And nobody at heavyweight is generating more of it than Anthony Joshua. That's a DAZN guy. The same applies with Canelo Alvarez and just about anybody else in any other fucking weight class from 160 to 175. Hell, who's generating more money than Canelo? Who's getting paid more money than Canelo? I mean, there's a reason they gave that kid that kind of contract. He generates numbers. Mikey Garcia just crossed over to the DAZN side of the street.
From the PBC.
We just talked about that in my previous video. If he was still on the PBC side of things, they could have got 2-3 more fights out of that guy. Those fights, they could have did decent numbers. Now he's going to do decent numbers for DAZN, not the PBC. The PBC in particular, who I've discussed on many occasions, they don't have as big a stable as you guys think they do. You guys don't realize how many divisions they don't have top talent in. And I actually touched on this in a previous video. For those interested in that, I'll leave the link to that video in the description box. That basically the PBC doesn't have enough guys to go around. They don't have enough top talent to go around throughout all these different weight classes in the sport of boxing. They don't have enough guys to go around to where they can continue to operate as an island. Because ultimately, it would lead to their own demise in the long run. Look at it this way. Their top selling guy over there at the PBC, the guy moving the most pay-per-views for the PBC, is a 40-year-old fighter in the twilight of his career who's only got one fight left on his contract. Very next fight, provided that he wins, even if it is a pay-per-view success, he could end up somewhere else thereafter, making money for someone else thereafter. That's the reality of where the PBC is. Nobody else is bringing in pay-per-view buys like Manny Pacquiao, but this is not an extended stay, you understand. Manny Pacquiao is here for a limited time only. You know, the bell tolls for thee, and the PBC can't lean on that guy to carry them into the following into the following, what, 5 years or something like that? PBC, they also don't seem to grow talent the way the Top Rank does. You know, Top Rank does have a knack for finding these star-studded amateurs and turning them into bona fide champions. They're very good at that. Whereas with the PBC, who's their Shakur Stevenson, you know?
Oh.
Who's their Teofimo Lopez?
Oh.
DAZN's got Devin Haney now, so who's PBC's Devin Haney? You know, who's their version of that guy? Who and where are the next generation of PBC fighters? Who and where are they? You understand? The PBC has to make serious changes if they are to survive. And I think it is for this reason that going into 2020, we might be seeing them working more with Top Rank. And I'll tell you, I've been very, very, very critical of the PBC in the past. But if they go into 2020 with this modus operandi, I'll lay off of them. Because that's all I ever wanted. All I wanted was the best fighting the best. You know, PBC might have some of the best guys in a weight class. Okay, if those are the best guys, they should fight the other best guys that are either with Top Rank, DAZN, or somebody else, regardless of who. That was all I ever wanted. And if the PBC really is going to change their business strategy and stop isolating themselves from from everybody else, I'm all for it. I'm not complaining. Like all news in the sport of boxing, you got to take this news with a grain of salt, because this revelation is not actually coming from a PBC employee, a representative, or a spokesperson. It's not Jordan Hardy or Tim Smith delivering this news. It's Bob Arum. And he's telling you what he thinks, and he can think that. Maybe he has a reason for thinking that. But until we see this corroborated from the PBC, somebody over there, somebody singing the same tune that Bob's singing, until we see this elaborated upon and discussed in a public statement like the one he's making, we really don't know if that's what's going to happen. I hope that it does, so that it can quell some of the discord and turbulence in today's boxing environment. Alright? Because no era of boxing, more than this one, has seen this many politics, this much bureaucracy, this much red tape, stifling fights. I mean, it's always been an element in the past, but not as ever-present as it is today. You understand? So, let's hope that somebody from the PBC makes some kind of a statement corroborating what Bob is saying. Moving on. Some disappointing news for anybody who was expecting to see Rigo in action this weekend. His fight with Liborio Solis is off because apparently Liborio did not have his visa issues, his paperwork, in order. So that fight's off. it's going to be postponed. And for a 39-year-old guy campaigning at
118.
bantamweight now, you know, Rigo dropped down to bantamweight. He dropped down from 122 to 118. But his fight, attempting to win a crown there, you understand. For a 39-year-old fighter, time is of the essence, and postponements can be costly. Anyone who saw Rigo in action in his last two fights has noticed the change in his base style, that he's not the nimble, athletic, agile counterpuncher that he used to be. That the skill set that made him known amongst the boxing hardcores, not so much the casuals, but the real observant guys like me and you. The skill set that made him a well-known figure amongst the hardcore boxing fans, that skill set is all but gone. And Guillermo Rigondeaux is now relegated to fighting inside the phone booth, inside the pocket, and trading blows with what many people would describe as lesser fighters. Lesser fighters than he is, or was. What remains of him today is unclear. I've said this many times since those fights, that if Guillermo Rigondeaux is adopting this kind of a base style, it's because at 39 years old, if he really is 39, if you ask me, he's older than that, and it shows on his face.
You can see it.
For a 39-year-old super bantamweight who has now moved to bantamweight, his legs just aren't there for that kind of stuff no more. The kind of speed, reflexes, agility, and all those things combined. The things that lended themselves to that hit and not get hit pure boxer / counterpuncher style of Rigo's, all those things have since evaporated. These little guys down there, super bantamweight and bantamweight, they don't age like wine, they age like fruit. It's a wonder that at 39 years old, and I reiterate, I actually happen to think Rigo's much older than that. Something to the tune of 44 as opposed to 39. But better still, those guys down there don't age like wine, they don't. And it's a wonder that Rigo's still around here today. But I feel like Rigo is a knockout waiting to happen at this point. You gotta remember, in his last fight, he was behind on the cards, and he was taking some really hard shots, taking a lot of punishment. If you're a pure boxer who found as much success as Rigo had found, you know, and not that many fights too, if you're a pure boxer, and that's what got you, you know, a reputation, that's what got you into that pound for pound list and all those kinds of conversations, why would you at 39 years old so decide to abandon that style that's gotten you so much success to trade blows on the inside with younger fighters? Why would you do that? Unless it's not that you're doing that so much as time is doing that to you. I hate to say it, but, you know, we could see Rigo going out on the Shield very soon. I feel like it's only a matter of time, and it could happen at the hands of some young fighter who isn't really the caliber of a Guillermo Rigondeaux, so much as, you know, they're younger and they have time on their side. This fight was intended to line up Rigo for some kind of a world title shot at a full title. You know, this fight was supposed to be for some kind of a baby belt. I forget which. And, you know, I just don't know how I feel about Rigo taking on any of those champions in the 118-pound division. Time just isn't on his side. And even if this fight did get postponed, does that really service him? You know, does he really have enough time to spare? Damn shame, that's all I can say. Because he needs to act, and he needs to act fast. And finally, I wanted to touch on a talking point that I've been seeing circulating since news broke that Mikey Garcia had crossed over to the DAZN side of things. There are those of you out there who feel that Mikey Garcia is ducking Manny Pacquiao, that he is looking to avoid him. I've seen this expressed in one of the comments under my videos, and I saw another YouTube content author, Johnny Boy Boxing, you know, that was the headline for one of his videos. And I'm not in agreement with that sentiment because, at least from where I'm sitting, it makes no sense.
How so?
I don't think that Mikey Garcia crossed over to the DAZN side of things to avoid Manny Pacquiao so much as pursuing the most lucrative option while he waits for Manny Pacquiao. If he would have stayed on the PBC side of things, they probably would have had him fight anybody from a Robert Guerrero to a Yordenis Ugas. I mean, pick your poison. They would have had him fight one of their guys, right?
But not Manny.
But he wouldn't have been able to make $7 million in that fight. It certainly wouldn't have been billed as a pay-per-view, given how poor he looked against Errol Spence. In all likelihood, if Mikey would have stayed on the PBC side of the street, he wouldn't have got $7 million his very next fight. But by crossing over to the DAZN side of the street for at least one fight, well, he can have that Jesse Vargas fight, which is a good acclimation kind of match, good experience fight against an experienced fighter for a whole heap of fucking cash.
While he waits.
More than he would have got if he would have stayed on the PBC side of things. And while he's doing this, Manny is doing what Manny does, having his pick of the litter. In all likelihood, and I told you guys before, in all likelihood, Manny won't pick Mikey next. Manny's likely gonna pick Danny, because Danny's coming off a win.
Or if it's Mikey's coming off a loss.
I don't think the higher-ups at the PBC and the higher-ups at Fox were in any hurry to put Mikey Garcia in another pay-per-view straight away.
Anyway.
Not after looking how he looked in the Errol Spence pay-per-view. I think that they likely had options for him, but options that were tune-up options, rebound kind of options, keep busy kind of options, but not the kind of options that would have got him $7 million. So what Mikey's doing is, yes, he's keeping busy, but he's taking the most lucrative offer to keep busy, and that offer came in the form of an offer from DAZN to fight Jesse Vargas, who is experienced at the weight. He's been a world champion there, and Mikey stands to make $7 million for that fight. It's not that he doesn't want to fight Manny Pacquiao. It's likely that he knows Manny's not going to pick him next. He still wants to fight, but Manny's not going to pick him next. So he needs to find someone to fight, and he's chosen the most lucrative option. That option right now is Jesse Vargas. It's not that he's avoiding Pacquiao so much as he needs to find a way to pass the time while he waits for Manny's dance card to open back up, because in all likelihood, Manny's going to end up fighting Danny Garcia in late spring or early summer of next year. While that's going on, Mikey can't just sit on his hands. He's got to do something. He wants to make some money, so that's what he's doing. But he's doing it while he waits. I don't view this as a case of ducking, because Manny Pacquiao is not in a position where one is ducked.
He's old.
Even if he's still formidable, even if some people might still look at him as a bit of a risk, at the end of the day, he's the cash cow. He's the fight you aspire to have, and he's 40 fucking years old, okay? You don't see a lot of 40 fucking year old fighters getting avoided. It doesn't make much sense that Mikey would choose to duck
The only cash cow.
Manny Pacquiao. Nah, he's biding his time. He still wants that fight, but he knows he's not likely to get it next. So he's just looking for a way to pass the time. He's going to do that with Jesse. That's what I think is going on. For Mikey, just about any top 10 welterweight is a risky fight. Just about any of them. Yordenis Ugas.
He's risky.
Sean Porter.
He's risky.
Danny Garcia.
He's risky.
Keith Thurman. They're all risks to Mikey. But he's still there at welterweight. And why do you think that is? Why do you think he's fighting Jesse Vargas at welterweight? He could just drop down to 140, fight somebody there. He's still at welterweight because he's waiting for Manny's dance card to open up. Use your heads, kids. Why the fuck else would he still be there?